Good morning and welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. We are um, closing in on episode number 30. Um, so we're going to have to do something soon, but to celebrate that. Anyway, um, we're gonna jump into our normal agenda. I have a memory. It's my turn for a memory, and I was thinking in terms of NBA finals and NBA history and things like that. And I thought way back, for me at least. I mean, relatively speaking, this is I went back to the 1996-97 season. And the Western Conference Finals at that time. This was the Utah Jazz against the Houston Rockets. And it was the specific memory I'm talking about is game 6 of that series, Western Conference Finals in Houston. The Jazz had this team for the last almost 10 years, really, that had been competing to get to the NBA Finals. They had John Stockton and Karl Malone, led by Jerry Sloan, the head coach, and they're going up against the Houston Rockets, who really combined a bunch of players. It was original big three, really, that you could think about, because they went from other teams and grabbed these veteran all-star players. They had Akeem Olajuwon, who was always there, but then they went out and got Charles Barkley. They went out and got Clyde Drexler, and these three Hall of Famers on the same team, trying to get themselves a championship as well. But the Jazz were the top seed in the West, and they were trying to get to their first ever NBA Finals. And so this was a memory. Game 6, the Jazz are down 12 points in the fourth quarter. And it looks like the Rockets are about to force a Game 7 back in Utah. And then John Stockton just takes over. He goes and he scores about 15 points, I think, in the fourth quarter alone, and including a final buzzer beater shot, 3-pointer to win the game and send the Jazz to the NBA Finals for their first time ever. And the emotion out of Stockton and Malone after hitting that shot was something you don't see very often with those two guys, especially Stockton. He does this whole jump like 8-10 feet in the air and throw his arm out, and the Jazz finally make it to the NBA Finals. Now, this is kind of a moment for me where I was first getting into watching basketball. Again, this is 1997, I think, May or June of 1997. I'm 8 years old, turning 9 that year. And so I remember watching part of the season as well and cheering for the Jazz because that's who my dad cheered for, and they were always fun to cheer for. And so, but this particular game, I don't know if either of you. I know, Cody, you were 1, maybe 2. So I know, Cody, you weren't there. And Dustin, you were 5 or whatever. And so I don't know if you remember that moment either. But we were in Disney World at that time. We had a big Rogers family reunion at Disney World in Orlando during the series, this game. And we had condos in Orlando that were right next to each other. And so I remember going from our condo, and there were Dad and a couple other people and I were watching the game, and then I would walk over to the condo next to us, which was Bryce Long and our cousin Bryce, Corey, Ed Long. They were watching the game too, and so I would go between the two rooms, and maybe I was 8 years old and thinking, I wonder what's happening in that TV now. Anyway, I went back and forth, but I was in our cousin's room when John Stockton hit that shot, and how everyone exploded in the room, and I'm like, yeah, what happened? But it was something that was that even ingrained to me at 8 years old how big of a moment that was for NBA, for Jazz fans, for things like that. And I can really trace a lot of my basketball love to that moment at Disney World in 1997. And so and then I mean, I'll hand it off to you two as well, but I mean, there's context to think about as well. This is the Jazz's first NBA Finals appearance ever. They would return the following year as well, two straight NBA Finals appearances, both against Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, both 6-game losses, unfortunately. Um, but still, that was the start of my love of basketball, I think. So throw it over to you
Great
guys.
memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, great memory. As you said, I was 5 or 6. I do not remember watching it live, but I've watched the replay many, many times. This is considered one of the great buzzer beaters. Love how that cemented, a moment of greatness for the Jazz franchise. Something that is kind of funny to call out is I don't know what the game plan was, but part of it was we're going to break the rule and make the refs call it, which was, they're going to set a screen and have Stockton go around the screen in order to get an open three. And Karl Malone's job was to tackle Charles Barkley to the floor. And that's basically what he did. He just bear hugged him and walked him across the floor and said, you're not getting over there. And so it borderlined halfway between illegal screen and flagrant foul. And of course it wasn't called, but John Stockton got an open shot off. And so, but it was that happens in every sports, which is I'm going to break the rule and hope they don't notice, or at least that they won't call it.
Yeah, that was an element that I had forgotten. Yeah, that it was completely completely illegal screen that Karl Malone did there. But and Rockets fans can be rightly upset about that. But yeah, like you said, it wasn't called. So.
Well, I like you said, there's no chance that I remember that. I was a year and a half, 2 years old, something. I was barely alive. And so absolutely no memory to go off there for me. But looking at the highlights, watching it a little bit, and of course, growing up, hearing my mom and dad talk about John Stockton and Karl Malone. I think mom and dad had mentioned a time where they met Stockton and Malone in person, and mom didn't know who they were, and things like that. But I grew up. I've known who John Stockton and Karl Malone were most of my life, just because hearing it from my dad, hearing it from you guys. I don't know, but so watching the highlight, it to me it kind of looked like the game plan in the fourth quarter was, I don't care how you have to do it, but get Stockton the ball. That was kind of what it was, and it worked out that way. So, um, and my thought about this is the first time they're going to the finals, just the emotion that the city of Salt Lake would have felt, and at that point, and we all. I'm pretty sure everyone can have some kind of feeling with that, whether whatever sport you're into, of your team, your city getting a big moment, whether that's going to the playoffs for the first time, winning a title for the first time, or going to a championship or whatever it is. So I think we can all, know what that kind of feeling is like. And so that's just super exciting that this is the first time for that.
Yeah, and I mean those finals against the Bulls, in particular that year, the 96-97 season, 97 finals, the Jazz were favored to win that they were the best team in the NBA all season long. And they were the top seed in the entire league. They had home court advantage in that series against the Bulls. And that game 6 in Salt Lake City, it'll forever be referred to as the flu game, where Michael Jordan had the flu and still dropped about 45 points in one series for Chicago. So as much as we want to debate, there's no debate that Michael Jordan is the best, was the best player at that time, and maybe the best player of all time. And that game in Game 6 has cemented his status for that, if nothing else has. But it's still frustrating as a Jazz fan that the Jazz had by far the best team in the NBA, but they couldn't get past the best player in the NBA. So. Any other follow-up thoughts?
But
Okay.
now we can discuss these finals now.
Yeah. So let's jump to the finals that are going on right now. Where we left off last week, we had just finished game one. Denver had won game one pretty easily, pretty handily. Miami wins game two in a really close game where the Miami shoots incredibly well in game two. And Denver has some struggles. They still lose by just a 3-point shot trying to send it to overtime, misses. And then the last two games, both in Miami, Denver's dominated both games really. And so Denver leads the series 3-1. We talked about how no team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in the playoffs. Only one team ever, in the finals at least, has come back from a 3-1 deficit. That was the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. They overcame a 3-1 deficit to beat the Golden State Warriors. And so it has happened, but once ever has a team come back from 3-1. Can Miami do it? I mean, let me leave it there. Can Miami win 3 straight against this Denver team? 2 of them in Denver.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, to answer this question, I don't think so. There's a few good things that Miami has going for them, which is that in the 3 games that they've lost, they haven't played particularly well. And so they have a ceiling that is higher. That they can elevate themselves, and they did that in game 2. We're able to elevate in order to win that game. So they have room to go up. They're not playing premium basketball. So you can look at that as a bonus for the Heat, that they can elevate in order to win games. So there's an absolutely, possibility there, but the Nuggets have been absolutely consistent. I mean, you look at the 4 games, the total score that the Nuggets have is like within 5 points of each other all 4 games. I mean, they're incredibly consistent. It's amazing how well Denver's able to do, and it's kind of, you could look at the Heat as being consistent in that they're in their 3 losses, they've scored within 2 points of each other, right? It's always been like 106 to 94 every single loss, and so there's some consistency there. But the Heat can elevate themselves. It's just gonna take a lot more than what they've been able to do.
Yeah.
I think that well, first of all, I was going to say, if I remember right, my prediction was Nuggets in 5. Was that was my okay? So this is going exactly as I had predicted in the beginning. So I'm not surprised. I we're talking about with your memory, the Jazz and the Rockets, and how you said, Scott, how the Jazz had the better team, but and then you went to the finals. I mean, Jazz had a better team, and then the Bulls had the best player. Well, in this range, the Nuggets have the better team and have the best player, and so I don't see any way for the Heat to be able to overcome this. And next game they're going to Denver as well. It's going to be in Denver. So it's not in their favor. Doesn't mean it's not impossible. So, but it's just not in their favor.
Yeah, this is going to be a crazy environment at Ball Arena in Denver on Monday. Nuggets have a chance to win a championship in front of their own home fans, and so it's going to be a huge environment there. And you have to talk about it. Both of you mentioned the best players are on Denver, the consistency, but you have to talk about not just the 2 players that we've talked about, mainly Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. By the way, both of them get a 30-point triple-double in game 3. That's insane. That's never happened, not only in NBA finals, that's never happened in NBA history, period. And so getting that was insane, amazing. But then you also have to talk about game 3. Christian Braun, the rookie, had a phenomenal game, both defensively, offensively, and then last night Aaron Gordon was the one that led the way. And so Nuggets are getting the contributions from every player, and Miami is struggling to get anything beyond what Jimmy Butler is offering. There's some threes here and there, but Miami is a Jimmy Butler led team, and Denver's getting contributions from 4, 5, 6 players that are really doing well.
Yeah, I love to analyze the strategies and the changes. Watching a game series, you get to see the impact that a coach puts in afterwards. And it was really cool to see what Coach Spo did in game 2, and that he put more size in, and he the way that he guarded Jokic off of screen and rolls, and the way that they specifically guarded Aaron Gordon with their size by putting Kevin Love into the starting lineup was a really neat change that Coach Spo did. And then Denver adjusted to that, and that they forced more switching and then had lots and lots of cutting. And so that's where you had Christian Brown doing lots of cutting, Aaron Gordon doing lots of cutting, MPJ doing lots of cutting in order to free that up. And then what Denver has done, which is completely shut down the Miami offenses, is they absolutely sprint to the 3-point line on defense. When anybody on the Miami team, any shooter gets the ball on the 3-point line, they are sprinting to defend that 3-point shot, saying, no, you have to take this to the basket. You have to go up against our size inside. And that's really what's been turning it for Denver and shutting down the Miami offense, is they haven't been able to get open threes because they're sprinting, they're running them off of that 3-point line and forcing them to take jumpers or in the paint shots against a really tough defense, against a lot of size.
Yeah. And I love what the Nuggets as a team and Michael Malone are saying, like everything. I think Michael Malone was quoted last night. They asked, "You're going home to win a championship in front of your home fans," and he stops them and he says, "We haven't done a damn thing yet. We need one more game." And so that's been, no one's celebrating. And you can see what Jamal Murray's interview was, what Jokic's reaction to his stats was. He says, they said, what about these 8 triple doubles in the postseason? And he says, I don't care. I mean, that's been the reaction from all these Nuggets, is they have one goal in mind, and it's not about getting triple doubles. It's not about getting a 3-1 lead. It's about winning 4 games in the NBA Finals and taking care of business. And I think that should be the case for all teams in the situation, but I don't think it always is. But the Nuggets are on a business trip right now, and they have one goal in mind.
I was just gonna say, and so far they're taking care of business. So.
Okay. We are moving sports from one championship series over to another. The Stanley Cup final, game 4 is tonight. Vegas Golden Knights lead that series 2-1. Vegas won both games at home. Florida Panthers won an absolutely critical game 3 at home to make it 2-1. And now they host game 4 at home tonight. All of us predicted a Vegas win, I think. Actually, did someone say?
I think I said Panthers.
That's right. So, any analysis about the Stanley Cup final? Vegas winning 2 games pretty handily, and then Florida winning game 3 in overtime.
Yeah, I'll go first on that. I was, looking at it in the first 2 games, the Golden Knights scored a total of 12 points. In hockey, that's crazy. 12 points, and the Panthers scored a total of 4 points in those first 2 games. And then in game 3, it almost looked like the Panthers kind of figured it out. They kind of figured out a little bit what they needed to do on defense, because then they kept the Golden Knights only to 2 points and just outscored them by 1. So I think they have their hands full. My prediction was, I think Panthers in 7 is what I had said. And so I think, if the Panthers with their home game tonight, if they can keep doing what they had figured out, the defense, they can even the tie out or even the game out 2-2. And my prediction could still be live. And so I think that it just looks like the Panthers kind of figured it out a little bit. But it doesn't mean that they haven't figured out for the rest of the series.
Dustin, any thoughts?
Yeah, Vegas has the opportunity to go up 3-1, which we've already talked about in most sports is it's almost a sure thing, and so they have to be able to steal one on the road, um, in order to win back at home and do great.
Yeah, Vegas was favored from the beginning of this series. They've been the best, well, technically the second best team in NHL. Boston Bruins were the best team, and then they got beat in the first round. But but Vegas was favored pretty heavily in this series. And like Cody said, they easily won their first two games at home, and the third win by the Panthers they had to take them to overtime. So I mean, I don't remember exactly what I said for games. I think I may have said 6 for Vegas, and I'm thinking it could be as quick as 5. But I like Vegas in the series, and I honestly like Vegas tonight too, to win and go up 3-1. Okay. Any final thoughts on hockey or basketball? Because we're moving sports. Okay. Dustin, I think you're the resident expert on this next topic. So take us through.
Yeah, I'll lead it off. So Tuesday, it was announced that the PGA Tour, LIV Golf, and the DP World Tour, which is the European Tour, are merging to create one league that are going to have a few key changes. One of them is that it's now a for-profit commercial entity. I mean, it's a business intended to make money. So this is obviously huge. It's one of the largest. It's perhaps the largest merger in sports, probably since the NBA and ABA merged back in the 60s, 70s. So it's probably the largest sports event in 50 years. It's obviously there's a lot of polarity here. A lot of people that are very much on one side or another, either hate LIV or love it or whatever it is. And it's big. But to kind of set some facts straight here, this new commercial entity, which they don't have a name for yet, has a huge investment from the PIF, which is the public investment fund led by the Saudi Arabian government. And so you could boil it down to say, hey, Saudi Arabia purchased the PGA Tour, which is probably, when it comes down to bare bones, that's what happened. Yeah. This PGA Tour was purchased by Saudi Arabia. And so I have a lot of thoughts. Let's get some thoughts from you two first, and then I can kind of bring it home with some final thoughts on my opinion. I guess I'll provide my opinion first, which is I think this is a good thing for the game of golf. I think that combining these things is going to be great for the game of golf. I think the next couple of years could be rough as players reintegrate, but it's absolutely going to be a great thing for the game of golf in general and the future of golf.
Cody, do you have any thoughts before I jump in?
Just a little bit, and it's gonna have to. Like you said already, Scott, that Dustin's probably the resident expert here. I didn't even know what LIV golf was until I heard about this. So I had never even heard of that. So that's where I'm in on the subject. I hear merger, I'm like, I don't even know who this is. So obviously everyone knows PGA. And so I know I don't really know what's going on. I understand a little bit. I've been doing a little bit of research. And kind of sounds like the Saudi Arabian bought it out. And from what I see so far, a lot of golfers like Rory McIlroy and other golfers are really, really upset about it, really mad about it, uncomfortable. And from what I can see, it's not going to be good for at least for the first few years. So I don't know what to expect because I don't have a lot of knowledge on the subject. But I guess I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah.
I have lots of opinions that I can provide. So
yeah, I'll give it back to you in a second, Dustin. I just have a couple of quick thoughts, and mainly it's kind of from a business and administrative side, because one of the things that I think sparked this merger was the ongoing litigation between the two two sides. There I think 3 or 4 lawsuits from one side against the other, and all of that goes away now with the merger because now they're one entity. And so I think that had a lot to do with doing this, saying rather than we fight, why don't we join sides? That sounds interesting, but and I think there's going to be some conflict, obviously, between the two sides, but at the same time, I think it is good for golf too, Dustin. I think it's a good way for. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just the way that people play golf is a little bit different, but it's just golf, right? I mean, it's still hitting a ball off a tee and trying to put it in the hole. We're not. People are not using baseball bats on one side and golf clubs on the other. This is the same game. It's just a couple of different rules and a couple of different administrative stuff. Also, from my side of things, there's a lot of different big sports organizations that are merging right now. This is the second big merger of sports in the last month. If you didn't know, WWE merged with UFC in the last month. And so this is happening across a lot of different sports organizations. And I bet we're going to continue to see some of that happen with some of these outlier sports organizations because it's good for profits to be able to combine that and say, if your fans like this one but not that one, why don't you combine it all together and you get more money that way? And so that's kind of what I'm thinking from an administrative standpoint. Dustin, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. So why a lot of this is happening, if you look at history of the world, post World War II, the United States made a huge investment in sports, and sports kind of became the cultural backbone of the United States. Baseball, football, basketball kind of became an American thing. And then in the last 20 to 30 years, all of those sports became much more global, golf included as well. And now the rest of the world is just as involved in sports as the United States has ever been. And so there's so much more money to be made around the world than there has ever been before. And that's why we're seeing much more of this happen. That's why you're seeing the NFL partnering with European countries to say, hey, the New Orleans Saints are now affiliated with Paris for some reason. Things like that's happening more and more often. And so that's definitely something that leads up to it. But to provide some context and education here, year and a half, 2 years ago, LIV Golf was founded, headed by Greg Norman, one of the greatest golfers of the 90s, Australian golfer, backed by Saudi Arabia. And they came to PGA golfers and said, hey, I'm gonna offer you some money to come play in the tournament. And they're saying, yeah, I don't know. If I win a tournament here, I'm going home with $2 million. He says, okay, I'll pay you $200 million just to show up. You don't have to win. You just got to be there, and I'll pay you $200 million. How do you say no to that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They wrote Tiger Woods a check for $700 million just to show up. He doesn't even have to win. He just got to be there. And then says, oh, by the win, you'll take home about 30 to 40 million if you win. Additional to that. And so many golfers be like, wait a minute, I get to work less for 10 times the amount of money that I make in a year. Who would say no to that? And that's what a lot of these golfers do. And then the PGA Tour took a stance saying, hey, you need to be loyal. And remember that this is Saudi Arabia. These are the people that sponsored 9/11. And this is the people this is where Osama bin Laden was born. They took a huge moral political stance that was really, really rough. That was just dirty. That was just bad. And then they paraded Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy out and had them continue to insult LIV every single day, saying these guys have lost their integrity. They're of no worth. We'll never invite them back to the PGA Tour. I hate playing against them in the majors. And president of the PGA, Jay Monahan, said this day after day after day. All the while, secretly, we were working a deal with LIV in the background, and then signed that deal on Tuesday and announced that deal. And so it's very strange. You look at Jay Monahan of the PGA Tour is kind of very hypocritical in that he was saying, well, never, ever, these golfers can't ever play in the PGA Tour again. They chose money over loyalty, and then he went and chose money over loyalty as well, and by signing the deal. And so it's very interesting. And you look at say Rory McIlroy, who now his best friend. You look at some of the best friends. Say Dustin Johnson. He's going to play in the same league with McIlroy again. The only difference is Dustin Johnson is $200 million richer. That's the only difference now, is these guys took a deal for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and are now back in the same place that they were 2 years ago. And so how do these guys who stayed in the PGA Tour, how did that feel fair? They're like, hey, wait a minute. We chose loyalty and we're not getting rewarded for it at all. These guys chose $200 million and now we're back in the same place. And so it's very interesting. There's a lot of opinions there that I have for sure. I think it's a good thing, but I also think that the PGA Tour really took an interesting strategy. They didn't know how to deal with competition and dealt with it very poorly.
Okay. And yeah, I would have to do a bit more research on my own to be able to have a few more thoughts. I think I mean, yeah, the merger of these two leagues, again, the UFC and WWE merging. I think we're going to see this in a couple other things as well. And so and we'll see how it goes, especially over the next year, how it goes between now this entity that exists between PGA and LIV, and see if there's anyone that hits each other with golf clubs over at the course, and see how that could be fun, right? Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson facing off in a duel with golf clubs instead of fencing swords. So
I have a follow-up question, by the way.
yeah.
And I'm transitioning this same idea to the NFL, or to football, I should say. So we already know that there's a Canada League, there's some European things going on, but we also know about the XFL and the USFL. And so I'm curious, with these mergers going on, do you guys expect the USFL and the XFL to do a merger and become an official minor league for the NFL?
I was thinking about that.
I don't think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I thought about that as well when I was thinking about all these different leagues merging. Obviously, the NFL is not going to merge with anybody. The NFL is its own power. They're not going to do anything. But these other leagues could. I don't know their administrative setup. I don't know how different the rules are, and so that could be something that comes in play. But I thought about that as well, wondering if that's a possibility. I don't have an answer, but yeah, I don't know how different those leagues are in administrative and rules and things like that. And that could have a big impact on that.
Yeah, I think that I don't expect merger to happen at all either, right? NFL is huge, right? They own the market in sports United States, and so they're not going to merge in any way. But I think that the best business decision the NFL could ever do was to purchase those other leagues and make them a minor league. I think that's the greatest decision that Roger Goodell could ever make, and I don't think he's ever going to make.
Yeah. NFL is the only one that doesn't have a minor league, and so why not do it? But and I guarantee you that the XFL and USFL, if the NFL offers that, they will jump on board quicker than anything, because they would love to be part of that. But I don't know if the NFL wants to do that, and I'm not sure why. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The NFL could increase their revenue by everything that those leagues bring in times 100 by putting NFL on it. And so they very well should. There's no reason not to, but I don't think that they ever will.
Yeah. I mean, MLB has had, baseball has had a minor league forever. And since the NBA has done this G League program, how much talent that's brought into the NBA from a different avenue. Look, college is great. It's a great avenue, but it's not for everyone. It really isn't. And so getting this avenue that is different from college that still provides a path to the NBA, that's a great thing that the NBA has done. And I think the NFL should provide a similar avenue.
I agree.
I was gonna say, thanks for the answers. I would agree with those two.
Yeah. I think our last topic in the last 3 minutes is Lionel Messi shocks everyone, I think, by signing with a Major League Soccer team. He's never. It's huge for American sports that this superstar, international superstar, who's played for Barcelona for many years and Argentina national team. He decides. I mean, how old is he? He's 40 now.
36.
Okay.
Late 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the last bit of his career, maybe he's decided to sign with a Major League Soccer team in the United States to play there with Miami. It's huge for Major League Soccer, but and it's going to add a couple dollars to Lionel Messi's account. But so let's talk about this. Thoughts from you two?
Yeah. So this is he's near the tail end of his career, and it hasn't been uncommon for players in the major leagues, over in Europe, to go down to a different league to finish their career. So that's not uncommon, but Messi being one of the greatest to ever do it, this is a big moment, especially with today's technology and social media. Me and some friends at work, we're doing some research on that. And so if you can gauge a person or an entity's popularity based on Instagram followers, I don't know if you can, but a lot of people do. The Dallas Cowboys, for example, have about 6.5 million Instagram followers. It's huge. Lionel Messi has 500 million Instagram followers. Absolutely dwarfs anything that exists in the United States as far as a popularity. And so he's going to bring a popularity to Major League Soccer in the United States that has simply never existed before.
Yeah.
I think really just the only thing I was going to say is there is nothing left that he has to do or prove. He is a superstar of all time. There's nothing that else he needs to do. And so in my mind, it's kind of like, why not? That's kind of his idea. I can do whatever I want, and people will pay me whatever I want. And so he's already proven himself over in Barcelona, Argentina. He's done everything he needs to do. He has titles, all that. And so it's just kind of one of those, I don't know. Let's have some fun with this kind of mentality, I think.
Yeah. This is not a fair comparison, but you think about Kurt Warner is the thing that comes to mind. He played in the XFL for 10 years, I think, before deciding to finally jump to the NFL. He was undrafted out of college, went to the Los Angeles, or the then St. Louis Rams, and then won an MVP, won a Super Bowl, did all in the final 8 years of his career, whatever it was. And so that's an unfair comparison because Lionel Messi has already proved himself, while Kurt Warner finally got to prove himself in the NFL. But we said it about guys that have gone down to other leagues, and that's a comparison that I thought of. But there is no comparison to this kind of thing. I don't think a guy's international superstar signing with a Major League Soccer team. So. Okay, well, I think that's it. I think next week